Let me tell you a story that's going to stay with you long after this video ends. It begins in Kolkata, India in 1993. A quiet neighborhood, a modest flat, and behind one closed door, a crime so shocking that even hardened detectives would later say they had never seen anything like it. The killer wasn't a gangster. He wasn't a career criminal. He was just a boy, 16 years old. His name was Sajal Barui, and on one November evening, he decided he'd had enough. He'd had enough of the life he'd been given, enough of the people he believed had ruined him. That night, with the help of a few friends, he murdered his entire family. This is not just the story of a crime, it's the story of a boy who grew up in pain, who carried that pain like a wound that never healed, and who, one day, let that wound consume everything around him. Sajal was born in late 1970s. From the very beginning, his life was marked by rejection. He was the son of an affair, a reminder of his father's betrayal. Eventually, his father, Subal, returned to his first wife, but he did not leave Sajal behind. He took the boy into that household, a decision that shaped the rest of his life. Imagine being a child in a home where you're not wanted. Every day, you're reminded that you don't belong. His stepmother resented him, and his half brother bullied him. And what should have been small mistakes on Sajal's part, the kind every child makes, were met with punishment that were cruel. Neighbors would later whisper about what they saw: burns on his skin, cigarette marks, even scars that they believed came from hot irons. Picture being an 8-year-old, desperate for comfort, instead being burned, beaten, and humiliated. That was Sajal's childhood. And as years went on, the pain didn't fade, it hardened. He carried it into his teenage years like a shadow. By 16, he wasn't just angry, he was furious. A teenager on the outside, but inside, a storm of resentment that had been building for years. On November 22nd, 1993, Sajal made a choice. He invited 5 of his friends over to his home in Damdam, a neighborhood in Kolkata. To the outside world, it might have looked like a bunch of boys hanging out after school. But behind those walls, the air was heavy. They were not there to watch TV or share snacks, they were there to kill. The first target was Sajal's stepmother, Niyati. Together, they tried to strangle her. She fought, but in the end, she lost her life. Then came Sajal's father, Subal, and his half brother, Kajal. But unlike Niyati, they did not go quietly. They resisted, they fought back. What followed was 3 hours of chaos: screams, struggle, blood. The boys grabbed some knives from the kitchen, stabbing, slashing, hacking at Subal and Kajal until the fight was over, until the flat was silent once again, until 3 people lay dead. And then something happened that investigators would later call chilling. The boys didn't run, they didn't panic. Remember, all of them were barely 16 years old. They cleared their weapons with mustard oil and laid them neatly on the table. Then they opened the refrigerator and started eating sweets. Picture that: the smell of blood still thick in the air, and teenagers laughing, eating sweets like they had just finished a game or something. Before they left, they placed money on the table, as if paying for what they had taken. Sajal later admitted that he'd copied the idea from something he had seen on television. And then the final trick. Sajal told his friends to tie him up. He wanted to look like a victim. When police arrived, they found him bound, pretending to have survived the ordeal. At first, the officers believed him, but the lies didn't last long. He had no defensive wounds on him, no attack wounds either. His story fell apart, and before the night was over, Sajal confessed to everything. The news hit Kolkata like a storm. A 16-year-old boy had murdered his family. People couldn't comprehend it. Newspapers branded him the boy killer. When the trial began, the courtroom became the stage for a battle. Prosecutors painted Sajal as cold blooded, manipulative, someone who couldn't be saved. The defense told a different story. They spoke of a boy brutalized by those who should have protected him, pushed past his breaking point. In the end, the court chose severity. At just 16, Sajal was sentenced to death, one of the youngest in India's history ever to receive such a punishment. But the case wasn't over. On appeal, the Kolkata High Court stepped in. His sentence was reduced to life imprisonment. The reason being his age. He was just 16, still technically a child. The decision sparked fierce debate. Should teenagers who commit such horrific crimes be treated as adults, or should they be treated as children shaped by their circumstances? For a while, it seemed Sajal could spend the rest of his life behind bars. But his story had some more twists and turns to come. In 2001, while in Mindapur jail, he complained of kidney problems. Guards escorted him to the hospital. There, he somehow got his hands on bottles of beer. Investigators believe that he got them smuggled into the hospital. He offered them to the guards. They accepted. They drank. What they didn't know was that the beer had been spiked with sleeping pills. Minutes later, both guards were unconscious, and Sajal walked out the door. For almost 2 years, he disappeared. Rumors spread, and some said he was in Mumbai, living under a new name. Some said he got married. Others believed he was still committing crimes. For the police, he was a ghost. He had just vanished into thin air. But in 2003, his luck ran out. A petty criminal arrested in Mindapur was recognized by a jailer. It was Sajal. Once again, he was back in custody. Inside prison, he was moved often. At one point, he was held alongside notorious gangster named Aftab Ansari. Authorities worried that left unsupervised, Sajal could fall deeper into the criminal world, so they moved him again, away from the gangster. By 2010, after nearly 17 years in prison, the law gave him another chance. The Juvenile Justice Act had been amended by then. Because he had still been a child at the time of his conviction, his release was allowed. The boy who killed his family walked free once again. But freedom did not last long. In 2011, Sajal was arrested again, this time for robbery. Convicted, he went back to prison. In 2017, he was released once more. Since then, he's disappeared from the headlines. The story is that he's living a quiet life somewhere in India. Others believe that he is never far away from the world of crime. Nobody knows for sure. The story of Sajal Barui is not simple. On one hand, he was a boy born into cruelty, a child beaten, scarred, and rejected. On the other hand, he was a murderer who planned and carried out the brutal killing of his own family. It leaves us with conflicting emotions: sympathy for the child he once was, outrage for the killer he became. Before we end, there is one rumor that needs to be cleared up. You might have seen reels or Reddit posts claiming that Sajal Barui had a Pinterest account with posts linked to the murders. The claim is In my opinion, false. Pinterest didn't even exist in 1993 when the murders happened. It launched in 2010, if I'm not wrong, long after the crime. Yes, there is an account under the name Sajal Barui, but it's filled with random boards about gadgets, crafts, even knives. There's no evidence it belongs to him. Most likely, it is someone else, an imposter trying to stir up attention. It's a reminder of how easily myths can spread online. But the truth of this case is already disturbing enough. It doesn't need exaggeration. The scars of this case still linger in Kolkata, in the memory of a family destroyed, in the questions about how to handle children who kill, and in the haunting image of a boy whose pain turned into rage. This is the chilling case of Sajal Barui. If you found this story as haunting as I did, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and turn on the notifications. Each week, we dive into true crime cases that reveal the darkest corners of the human mind. Until next time, stay safe and stay curious.